All right, Ushama, are you happy to start?
Certainly.
Okay, so I think we've got a bit to cover, so I don't want to detract from the time. Om Namo Narayanaya, and good evening to everyone participating, and welcome to a very important topic today, and which is building a healthy workplace mind, conflict resolution in the professional sphere. I'd like to welcome Dr. Usha Vasthare again to her home in South Africa as a sister devotee of the Ramakrishna Center of South Africa. We are so pleased to have you back, to be engaging you in building better mental health for everyone. For those of you who do not know, Dr. Vasthare started her career as a neuroscientist. And she always tells me that her interest in the brain then led to the interest in the mind, and became then the founder of the Yogakshema Rehabilitation Center, using mental health and mindfulness and techniques in brain mapping in order to enhance mental health. She has over the years been a prolific international speaker across continents. She's an author, has made numerous television and radio appearances, and has a long list of credits to her name. She's been an annual guest to our center and has been fulfilling and making a difference in all spheres of life. So we are really happy to have her back with the series of talks that she has going to be giving. And so please look out for those notices. So welcome. And I think this topic is of particular interest to many. I say we spend more than 50% of our waking time in the workplace or the professional sphere, and not counting the number of hours after hours that people spend working. And it is sometimes unfortunate that this environment is not one where you are nourished and supported, and impacts a lot on people's mental health. I think there are a lot of struggles being faced at the moment, and so therefore this topic has become something that's really important. So without further ado, I'd like you to start with your talk.
Sure. Let me start sharing the screen.
Yes, that's good. Thank you. Can I just make an appeal? If your audios are not muted, can you just please mute your audio? Thank you.
Hey. Om Namo Narayanaya for everyone. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarva dharma swarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Topics like this, focusing on conflict and conflict resolution, we will see just run-of-the-mill tools and techniques to deal with this is never going to be enough. We need to go something beyond than what we already know of. And we certainly have to think out of the box. We have to think in creative ways. We have to reinvent ourselves if we really need to have a healthy mind. Not just healthy workplace mind, just to have a healthy mind, because it's the same mind. We take it home. And usually it is the same mind how it is in the workplace, that is what we take it home, because this mind goes with us everywhere we go. Until and unless we train ourselves to compartmentalize our mind and leave things at work, it's going to be impossible not to take this mind back to our homes. So with this brief intro, let's see. When does a conflict start in our lives? You know, actually, a conflict starts like when a mother starts with solid food for her baby. That is when the conflict starts for a human being. The baby learns the communication skills and it refuses to take that solid food. But mom knows that is good for the baby, and there is a tug of war right there. Because there is always difference of opinion anywhere for that matter between two people, and two people will never agree all the time. So it starts when we are babies. It's okay. That's when the conflict starts. But when do we learn to resolve a conflict? You know, as soon as we learn some negotiating skills. And that kid, after few months, will learn, maybe a year or even less than that he doesn't want to eat the food on the high chair in the kitchen, wants to eat watching the TV, or these days wants to eat using the cell phone, right? Watching videos. So the negotiating skills start even when we are young, when we are babies. So this picture depicts all ages of children, how they're trying to negotiate with their mothers. And there are different ways of negotiating with kids or with siblings, as you see. As we get to teenagers, it's a different issue altogether. It becomes more complicated. However, our interest today is at a professional place where we work. So let us understand what is conflict before we go into resolution of conflict. Conflict is a normal part of a healthy relationship. And it arises because of various differences. Because two people cannot be expected to agree on everything and all the time. That is where the conflict starts. People think differently. They feel differently. They act differently. They react differently. Their needs, their beliefs are different. And even much more than that, their values are different. Even at home, the values of spouses may be different. The values between children and parents might be different. This is the crux of it. The values, our beliefs, and our needs. Because they differ, that is where the conflict starts. At a workplace, especially at a competitive workplace, these days, any workplace is a competitive workplace, as we know, the conflict becomes worse. Because we are competing for limited resources. We are competing for the same title. We are competing with the territory. For the territory, it could be promotion, it could be for the prestige, about the honor, our name, or we can be competing for power, which makes it even more harder at a workplace. However, the key is to learn to resolve this in a healthy manner. When a conflict is handled in a very respectful, positive way, healthy way, in a win-win situation, conflict actually provides an opportunity to become closer, to build stronger and more rewarding relationships. And the efficiency also increases after we resolve the conflict. However, those skills that we need to learn to resolve the conflict, we need to learn and keep on honing the skills. However, when that conflict is mismanaged, it can cause great harm to any relationship. And certain conflicts can never be managed in a respectful, healthy, and positive way because of issues of power. Of course, it becomes even more difficult in a professional place, and it does not limit to a professional place. Many a times, even at home, when the issues of power is introduced, it becomes really, really tough. At least you can go look for another job. But in a family situation, if there are issues of power between parents and children, between partners, between siblings, depending on the culture and depending on the values, it becomes a lot more difficult. And it's not as straightforward as it seems. So let us go and look at the role of power in conflict resolution, just a tad deeper into this, and so we can understand. Power plays a major role in most conflicts. And there are two types of power we'll see. This comparative power over power, which is viewed as a win-lose competition. You can never have a win-win situation in this power over comparative way of looking at a conflict. So it impairs any chance of resolving the conflict. However, the cooperative power with conflicts, it can actually generate more power and you can become more efficient than before. And these high power groups, they actually like that power. They like to use that power. They want to justify having that power, justify using that power. And they do everything to keep that power. Whereas the lower power groups, on the other hand, they tend to be short-sighted and they are a discontent group. And they express their discontent by blaming the situation, by blaming others. Even though they can empower themselves through cooperation and collaboration, it is hard because they get into a blaming game. When they get into a blaming game, figuring out whose fault it is, somebody else's fault, but not mine. So blaming and defending, what we call these as automatic negative thoughts, when we get into this blaming and defending game, we can never, ever learn anything from that. So no one wins playing the blame game. Although without our knowledge, this is the norm for most people to start blaming and defending, because that is the only way we have figured out how to go on with the life, by blaming and defending. But if we can get out of this blaming and defending game, at least there is an opportunity to learn. If we are in that vicious circle of blaming and defending, trust me, there is no way, even everything is given on the platter, it's impossible to learn, because it we resist any new techniques, any new tools, any new way of dealing with the situation. And it's not restricted to conflict resolution. This is in general. So the first and foremost thing is to build up our awareness. The self-awareness has to be heightened so that we recognize when we blame, and we need to recognize when we start defending ourselves and blaming others. And we need to come out of that cycle right away. So what happens when we are in this blaming mode? It leads us to a victim mode. Even though there are many possibilities of either cooperating or collaborating or coalition, it's not possible for us to see any way out because we remain in the victim mode. So what we call it as, quote unquote, we will be in the surviving mode. However, there are some people, even with any conflict, it doesn't matter. They know how to be creative. They reinvent themselves for many different reasons. The first and foremost is, especially at a workplace, we need that paycheck at the end of the day. So somehow people reinvent themselves, become creative. And now they don't just survive through the situation at the workplace. They even become successful and they thrive. However, sometimes it is not possible to resolve a conflict because of issues of power. And we're not ready to compromise. And because we get into that loop of blaming and defending, we don't see many possibilities and choices and options. So it is, forget about thriving and being successful. It's even hard to be surviving in such a situation. And especially when there is no reconciliation because of the issues of power. But yet, we still have to be in a working relationship. We still need to be working. So maybe for the paycheck, may not even be for the paycheck, for the love for the work that we do, we want to continue. But it becomes impossible to continue, especially when there are issues of power, the power over conflicts. Then what is the solution? What is the solution when such things happen? Ken Cloak, he's one of the top-notch mediators, international mediator. He says, conflict is the arrow pointing to what we need to learn the most. And especially when there are issues of power, we need to take this into account. So he has co-founded an organization called Mediators Beyond Borders. He has 37 years of experience mediating and with conflict resolution in 25 different countries. And he's known for proposing conflict resolution and to end up having win-win solutions most of the times. So he says, conflict is the arrow pointing to what we need to learn the most. Let us see what this statement means from a neuroscience perspective, and also, if time permits, and I'll just touch upon from spiritual angle too, because when there are issues of power, especially power over conflicts, where we do not see any reconciliation and no resolution of these conflicts, sometimes we need to go beyond just a certain perspective. This is where we need to think outside of the box. And these days it has made it easier because the neuroscience perspective, the newest branch of neuroscience, which is positive psychology, helps us to go just beyond the standard ways of dealing with this, which is very akin to a spiritual perspective too. We will see what it means in a few minutes. So what is the solution when there is no resolution, when there is no reconciliation? The only way out is to go in. That is the time to go inward and time to look within for answers that are already within us. In other words, in a scientific way of saying, it is time to evolve. One of the definitions that we give is evolving. Simplest way to look at it is to look for the solution from within. Of course, we need to try and see for solutions from outside that is quick, easy. However, when that is not possible, the only way out is to go inward. And that is the time to evolve. So then what happens? From the blaming mode and being in the victim mode, from surviving through thriving, we convert that to evolving. And what does that mean? We will see. All it means is we need to train our minds. We need to think out of the box. We need to change the way we are looking at things so that the things we look at will change. We need to change the way we look at the conflict. We need to change the way to look at the people who are involved in bringing this conflict and making it even more complicated. We just have to change the way we are looking at it. Otherwise, there is no way we will be able to have a resolution for ourselves inside and to be healing from inside out. I just want to use 2 shlokas of Bhagavad Gita to help us. I'm just going to say this shloka, but I will look at this from a scientific perspective, because whatever I'm saying, the terminologies are different. I'm saying in a scientific manner, but all of this has been said in our scriptures way, way back by our rishis and munis. This shloka is from Bhagavad Gita, Dhyana Yoga chapter, and it goes like this. Uddhared atmanatmanam, natmanam avasadayet. Atmaiva hyatmano bandhur, atmaiva ripuratmanaha. That means we need to use the powers of our mind and elevate ourselves. Do not let yourself down. Krishna says, for the mind can be your friend, or if you don't take care of that mind in a proper way, it can turn into our own enemy. Going further in that same chapter, Dhyana Yoga, he says, Bandhuratma atmanastasya enatmaivatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvatu. Similar way of saying that whoever has conquered the mind will be their friend. However, if we fail to conquer our mind, what we call it as manojayaha, not just controlling the mind by just using the willpower, but using the knowledge, the self-awareness, the discerning power, and of course the willpower too, and the free will. We need to conquer our mind, not just control our mind using the willpower. Then the mind becomes our friend. If we fail to do so, the same mind becomes our enemy. We will see how it is the same mind. It is until now looking at the conflict in one way. If we change the way we look at it, we look at the situation itself changes because of the way we are looking at it. Then the same mind will have solution. That same mind will become our friend too. So, what is evolving? And there is a simple formula in this situation I can give you. Formula to evolve. How do we look at this situation of conflict? Simple formula is A plus B plus C equals evolve. And let's see what each of these variable A and B and C represent. A represents, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change, what I have been saying. It was, as far as I know, it was first said by Max Planck, a quantum physicist, and later on many people, including Wayne Dyer, he quotes this quite often. They use that. It's a profound statement. I made this as a formula. If we follow these three things, in this formula to evolve, and this is not just for conflict, for anything in life, we can use this as a formula. And we can see how we can evolve through this. So the situation, a conflict, we would be blaming and adjusting and just going through the work. From that, we start looking at it as to how do we evolve from that quote unquote survival mode of working in the working space to changing certain things, whatever we can, and adjusting and adapting, and finally to be evolving. We will see what that means again. Again, part of that is when we start looking at things in a different way, it's also will help us to understand our own mind, starting with why. Why do we need to change the way we are looking at this conflict? Why can't I try for the other person to change? That's a normal way of asking. And when we know when it is not possible to change others, this is where we go deeper, inward, to understand ourselves, to understand the meaning and purpose of our life, so that we can train our minds, we can change our mind, and we will stop even expecting for somebody else to change their actions, their behavior, their perception of things. So the next aspect, the variable is B, which is the serenity prayer, which we know says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This prayer is so scientific. Again, all of this, it's not just for conflict resolution. These are all truths of the higher order. We can use this for anything and everything in life and be able to solve a lot of things, even more than solving, to be evolving. If we can solve certain problems, well and good. But even when we are not able to solve the problems, I can assure you, we can be evolving. What more can we ask for, right? Such a highly scientific prayer. What are the things that we can change? What is it that we cannot change? first and foremost, we know, but we are still so optimistic. We still keep trying to change others. We know it is almost impossible to change others, including kids. We can only influence them, not really change them, but we still keep trying, right? I would say not that we forget, but we are too optimistic. But we need to know the difference between what is it that we can change and what is it we cannot change. And of course, if there is anything within us, we need to take it to a level to be able to change whatever it is possible for us to be changing. That's why, I always say this evolving business, if I can say that, this evolving is until our last breath. Even when we are not able to move, lying on the deathbed, it is still possible to be evolving. We also have to know that wisdom to know what, as I said, what we can change and what we cannot. So this whole presentation will involve obtaining that and gaining that wisdom to know what is it that we can change and what is it that we cannot change. Especially when it is power over issues in a conflict situation, we know it is impossible to have a win-win situation. Once we know that wisdom itself will take us, will help us to go inward, to be evolving. So the last aspect is this evolution of human beings. It's not a stage to reach, just like how we have evolved from our closest four-legged cousins with a tail. From once, even before that, each one was a stage. But once we get to the humans, we really don't need to evolve, because until the human stage of evolution, this evolution was for the survival of the species. But once we have reached this acme of evolution, that highest stage of evolution, becoming humans, evolution of human beings is not for our own survival of the species. Survival is not at stake. How time. There is no other way but to evolve. And this evolution, what we call it as psychosocial evolution. So it's not a stage to reach, but this is on a moment to moment to moment basis. Yes, there are times we go down, we fall down. We might even feel like or behave sometimes worse than our closest cousins, It happens. To be kind to ourselves and to be able to overcome and know that we have the cerebral capacity to rise up and to be evolving the very next moment is what it takes to be evolving on a moment to moment to moment basis. So the formula to evolve is the solution is within us. And we need to have the wisdom of what is it that we can change and what is it that we cannot change. And lastly, that evolution of humans is on a moment to moment basis and not a stage to reach. So for that solution, to know that the solution is within us, we need to change our perspective. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. It is not as easy, I can assure you. This is where having the right company really, really matters. Take it from me. Saying all of this through experience. Why? Why do I look forward to coming back here? It is South Africa is the half the distance of America, but takes more time to get to Durban than going to US. The reason is it is for the company. To be in a setup as an ashram, to be with the holy company, to be able to imbibe the values and to be able to train our minds, not just using the willpower. We don't even have to use any willpower when you are in the right company, in the right place, I can assure you. All we need to do is to keep gaining that knowledge and the wisdom. And that is what helps us. The right company and the right place helps us to build up this emotional strength and to convert that into spiritual strength. That is what is needed to be evolving. And, I have to put this in here. In fact, Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission has a ready-made formula for this. They have a ready-made formula to make us all karma yogis, because they say it's atmano mokshartam jagadhitayacha, for one's own salvation and the salvation and for the benefit of the society. When we do that, what happens? We become karma yogis. And why? Why do we need to become karma yogis? Because once we become karma yogis, then and only then will we be eligible to gain that knowledge, the ultimate knowledge, because that is where the mind gets purified. In Sanskrit, we call that chitta shuddhi. That is when we become real karma yogis, not volunteers. There is a huge difference between volunteerism and being karma yogi. That's another topic, another day. I don't recall the date. Yes, there is one like that, a selfless service and karma yoga. Not just volunteering, but to become karma yogis. That is how we gain the eligibility to actually absorb this knowledge, the highest knowledge, truth with a capital T. So, with that, what helps us to evolve? Before I go into this, Shivani, I would like to see if people have any questions here. We can take a few questions if need be before we go into the answers for this.
That would be great. I think just before the questions is perhaps just to explain, because we do have some members here that are not familiar with the concept of karma yogi, just to define that a little bit.
Yeah. I will put it in a scientific way, because if there are people who are very new here, if they do not know what karma yoga is, what is karma yogi is, let me make it in a scientific way. the difference between volunteering and karma yoga is this. Volunteering is we give of our time or our resources for something greater good. And it feels good. I've been a volunteer for decades now, having that frame of mind, right? That's volunteerism. However, karma yoga, there has to be a specific goal. If it is just for time pass, if it is just to feel good, then calling ourselves as volunteers is much better than calling ourselves as karma yogis. The goal of a karma yogi has to be the ultimate, in the sense, in the scientific way, to be evolving. And if I have to use a scriptural term, it is nothing but realizing the ultimate truth. If our goal is not realizing the ultimate truth, we might be thinking we are doing karma yoga, but it is only volunteerism. So that is the quick difference between karma yoga and volunteerism. So as long as our goal is to be evolving and to be able to figure out the meaning and purpose of our life, the ultimate meaning and purpose of our life, whatever we try and give of ourselves becomes karma yoga. Any action can be converted into karma yoga. But the standard definition of karma yoga is you do something, you do not expect the results. I purposely stayed away from that, gave a different definition. Because even with volunteerism, we can be doing without expecting anything. But there is one important goal of a karma yogi, which is the ultimate realization of the truth with the capital T. That should suffice, I think, right, Shivani?
Thank you. I don't see any questions on the chat.
Okay.
So I just want to see if there's any reactions, or please, if you can just raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Please don't feel shy. This is a safe and open forum. So we hope that at the end of the talk, we're all going to have some tools to practice better. So if there are no questions for now, please, as you're thinking about them, just put them into the chat and we can come back to them. Thank you.
Okay. I'll continue, Shivani. I'll continue then.
Yes, yes. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So if that's the case, what will help us to evolve? And what helps us to have a healthy mind, both in the workplace and everywhere for that matter? It's all about how we see the reality. What is happening in the outside world? How do we see? Do we see the reality as it is, or do we see the reality as we want it to be? It's a really deep question for us. This is where we need to train ourselves how we see this reality. Usually we see the reality in two ways: black or white, right or wrong, good or evil, short term, long term. We are, I won't even say trained. This has come as an automatic way because this is what we have seen all along throughout our lives. Seeing the world from a Newtonian perspective, having only two choices, just like with the computer, binary way of looking at the reality. But there are other ways, like knowing first that there are many, many possibilities, many different ways of looking at reality itself is a stepping stone that will help us a lot, rather than just looking at from a binary perspective. So how do we see the reality? These are the ways we're going to go a little bit deeper into each one of these. It is a way of seeing life as a unified whole. And it is a way of seeing that there is no divide between two separate things. And it's also a way of facing the reality, which we'll see, go into each one of these. What do I mean by that? Seeing life as a unified whole. We know this story, or even while we are young, right? The 6 blind men trying to figure out what an elephant is. Each one picks up an organ and then says, oh, this is what it is, that's what it is. Of course, it is like a tree trunk. A leg is like a tree trunk. And the tail, of course, is like a rope. Each one is true, but it's only partly true. And even if we put all of these together, it does not become an elephant. We can understand this with this story. We forget, these stories and fairy tales and nursery rhymes too. They have such deep meaning. As we get older, we need to relive those nursery rhymes and fairy tales and understand the deeper meaning of these things, and then it will help us a lot. We see the external world and the people around us in a similar way. We only see one aspect of a person. We only see one angle of the situation, what is happening at work. We will never be able to know everything that is happening because there are way too many variables. It's impossible to know. But yet, with our limited perception, with our limited view, we make decisions and we come to conclusions about things. There is no other way, we know that. But as we make decisions, can we be always cognizant of the fact that there are other angles to this, including the other person's angle and many other angles? Just seeing this is a way. It helps us to see the world from a different perspective, knowing, yes, of course, there are many different angles. Maybe I was only seeing in 2 or 3 different angles, but there are many more. So that is what it means by seeing life as a unified whole. And as Aristotle says, the whole is always greater than the sum of its parts. So we really need to think about this, something to reflect upon. The second aspect of seeing the reality is we always have certain things that we want to be doing, but we have to be doing other things too, we know. So this divide between have to do and want to do should just go off. And whatever has to be done, we should just do it. Whether there is conflict or not, we should just do it. And I know that is what we are doing, but we are also resisting inside. This is not the way it should be. That is what is actually causing us many a times, probably some dissonance within us. And that is what causes chronic stress if we don't resolve. Even though we are working the way we should work, it's still because of that resistance, because we have not accepted, yes, that conflict exists, there is nothing I can do, how do I go about? That resistance is what causes long-term stress and chronic stress. What do? Just do things, but we need to do things in the right way. Do the right thing first. And then we can think about how to do things right later. But doing the right thing each time and every time, whether we are working with people who have issues or we don't, either it's a friendly group or it's a hostile group, just keep doing the right thing, which is what will help us to take the right decisions later on. And the last way is, how do we face the reality? It's a way of facing the reality. Which is that? We have not seen it this way, but it's our thoughts that represent our reality. It's our feelings that represent our reality. And our thoughts, we should know it's only our thoughts. And our feelings are only our feelings. Not everybody else's, not others, and the other colleagues might not attest to our thoughts and feelings. So their reality will be different. Our reality will be different. But we have the option to act on our thoughts. And we have the option to act on our feelings. And not acting is also an option. It's a choice that we need to make. But at this juncture, we need to remember just one thing, which is not all thoughts are true. They may be our thoughts. We may be thinking in our own mind. Just because they are our thoughts does not mean they're always true. There are many thoughts that are false. And many a times, highly charged emotional thoughts and automatic negative thoughts, most of them are false. And when it comes to feelings, feelings may not be facts. But we hold on to our feelings so much, and the feelings stay much longer than our thoughts. And the feelings are expressed at the level of the body. These two neuroscience concepts, we need to really remember anytime we are in any conflict situation, even otherwise, any charged situation, whether positive or negative for that matter, we need to remember these neuroscience concepts, which will help us to remain in an equanimous manner. So how do we see the reality? My thoughts represent my reality, and my feelings represent my reality. And my thoughts are only my thoughts. My feelings are only my feelings. And I have the option to act upon my thoughts, and I have the option to act on my feelings. We need to remember this. But emotions or feelings are not facts. And many of the painful emotions that go along with a conflict situation, they arise from our own beliefs rather than from the reality itself. So if there are certain beliefs that are hurting us, that are pulling us down, we need to look into our belief system and see which are the beliefs that is hampering me, that is pulling me down. Question our beliefs and change our beliefs if they are not helping us. And it's always the distorted perception of the reality that hurts us much more than the reality itself, especially when we are working in groups, especially when we are working in teams. One person who is negative, always thinking about the past, painful emotions, or too much work, too much of responsibility. One or two people constantly talking about such things is enough to spoil the whole mood of the whole team. But the reality is, only on that day, that is the same work somebody will be doing each day, every day, because of some other personal issues. All of a sudden, we couldn't handle this. So it is the distorted perception of the reality that hurts us much more than the reality itself. So the same amount of work will look like it is more. And the mind, we know, takes on the quality that it dwells on. If we are constantly focusing on the things that we don't have, constantly focusing on things that are going wrong within ourselves or in the system for that matter, there will always be things that will be going wrong, whether in this body or in that outside world or in the system. Can we train ourselves to see what is good that is happening? Any government that, for that matter, whichever country, does not matter. There will always be something good that is happening. Nothing can be always bad all the time. So we need to hone in. This is what takes so much effort. Until and unless we believe in this, this cannot happen because it takes a lot of effort. And noticing what is wrong, and especially if we are intellectuals, we are trained to see what is not going right. We need to train ourselves to focus on what is happening that is good, but being fully aware of what is not happening right. I'm not saying in an ignorant manner we should be focusing on positive things. No, being fully aware, but still focus on the positive things. It is a lifetime effort, I can tell you. And then you will see even one person is enough to pull the energies down. Even when things are happening great within the team, one or two people focusing on the negative aspects is enough. This is where truly developing an attitude of gratitude and to focus on things what is going on right, and to be focusing on things that we need to be grateful for is extremely important. And not just say it that we are grateful. And if we're really serious about truly evolving, to sit down in a place at the same time, in the same place, preferably, and write down just 3 things you're grateful for that day, and try and see if you can come up with 3 different things every day. Just do it for 1 month and see the change that can happen. Try and see if you can not repeat the previous days. Let it be 3 new things every day for 1 month and see how things change. So we need to be accepting the reality as it is. When we accept the reality as it is, because it's impossible for us to be able to change what is happening in the outside world when we have tried, this is where it helps us to radically transform our emotions and feelings. To sum up what I have said so far, we are the thinkers of our thoughts. We are the thinkers of our thoughts. And you just have to remember that peace is just one thought away. Yes, this moment we might be angry. We might have feelings of jealousy. We might have feelings of sadness, guilt, does not matter. But the next moment, we can put in an effort and bring in a peaceful thought. And see, when you bring in that peaceful thought, do it with full intensity, feel it, and then think about that peaceful thought and see the magic that happens. I say magic because it is instantaneous. The more we feel these healing thoughts, healing feelings, the better it is for us, because every thought and every feeling releases a chemical. And such healing thoughts do release healing chemicals. Loving thoughts will release loving chemicals. And negative thoughts, focusing on the conflict, analyzing to death, even when you know it is not possible to have a win-win situation because it is an issue of power, still focusing on that will release such negative chemicals. We don't realize how it has an effect on our both physical and mental well-being in the long run. So just remember, peace is just one thought away. And just remember, kindness is just one thought away. And compassion is also one thought away. Empathy towards the same people who are showing power, compassion is just one thought away. And to forgive them is just one thought away. And to love even the difficult people in our lives, and especially the difficult people in our lives, is just one thought away. So we are only one thought away from evolving. And we're only one thought away, just one thought away from having a healthy mind, not just at the workplace, everywhere. That choice is ours. It doesn't happen in an automatic manner. We need to use our free will, and we need to make that choice in an effortful, willful, deliberate, conscious, and mindful ways. So to conclude, conflict then becomes an opportunity to evolve, which helps us to have a healthy mind. Thank you.
Shema, thank you very much for that wonderful talk with so much of depth and information to digest in a slow manner. I just want to see if there are questions in the chat, or you can raise your hands, please. We're happy to take any questions. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for that, there has been a question that has been sent, and it relates to the concept that you brought up of karma yoga. So we know that in Hinduism, we have 4 paths or pathways of spiritualism that, according to your different nature, becomes one or higher than the other. So that's karma yoga, which is the yoga of action and work, the Raja Yoga, which is the action of meditation, Jnana Yoga through knowledge, and Bhakti Yoga through devotion and loving devotion towards God. So the question was, is there any higher form? In that is karma yoga, the higher form. What is the higher route in terms of that yoga?
We usually classify like that, and we want to go to the highest, right? It is not about what is higher and what is not. It is about integrating all the 4 yogas, which is the most important thing. It doesn't matter which yoga we are following. Could be bhakti yoga, karma yoga, which is dominant. It's not that we can only follow one yoga. There are a lot of misconceptions on this. Hopefully in that talk of selfless service, I think karma yoga, I don't recall the title, I don't know when it is. We will go much deeper into this and then see how we need to integrate all the 4 yogas. And again, I say, I have looked into so many different organizations and different gurus and their philosophies for that matter. And of course, ultimately, each and every guru will say the same thing. But initially, when we are following, I have found out that the philosophy of the guru that I follow is gives us a healthy bent, because it helps us to integrate the very emblem of Ramakrishna mission, as you can see on the screen. It integrates all the 4 yoga. You cannot choose one over the other, but I will just give you very briefly about each one in one sentence, and then you will get an idea. Bhakti yoga is nothing but the love for the work that we do. It's not just bhakti is the devotion to God. If we have to implement that, the love for the cause, the love for the work that we do is nothing but bhakti. Karma yoga, as I said earlier, any work that you do, you can convert that into yoga. In other words, if you do not expect anything out of the work that you're doing, but you have to do as though you are getting 100% results the way you want it. But we cannot shy away from our effort in that. But the prerequisite for karma yoga is God realization, or the realization of the ultimate truth. Let us put it that way. That would be karma yoga. And Jnana Yoga is nothing but understanding who we are, who am I, and who is God, or what is God, and what about this world, and the relationship between the world and God and myself is the ultimate Jnana. And if we have to bring it to every day, it is knowing why do we do what we do. Why should we be eating certain things and not be eating certain other things? Going into that why, which is a very scientific thing, of course, going into the why, not just how, but going into the why is nothing but Jnana Yoga. To do all of this, we need to have a mind that is trained properly, so that we will be able to integrate all the three. And that is nothing but Raja Yoga. This much will suffice for today. In the other lecture, I'm going to be integrating these 4 yogas and comparing it to the different types of mind, or the functions of mind for that matter, not different minds, different functions of the mind. How does different functions of the mind relate to these 4 yogas? That's a different topic for another day, Shivani. So integration is what is important. Otherwise, just like everything, there will be imbalance.
Yeah, thank you. So while we're waiting for other questions, I'm going to just give you 2 questions, which you probably can answer back to back. And one is related to the fact that the Western frame of success and the ladder of success and the aggressive march up the ladder of success versus the one of the kindness and the kind march up the ladder, which is usually equated with less success, and sometimes with a softer approach that's not seen to be successful. So that's the one part of the question. And the second is also, I think one of the common scenarios that people talk about is having a lesser experienced student who is now the boss, that the more experienced person then has to be a subordinate to. And how does one then function in that way, where you have to accept the leadership because you cannot change it, but also perhaps are quite resentful about that particular issue where a person's own qualities and own expertise have been ignored. I think in areas where you see corruption and nepotism, a lot of these things may also be at play as well. So those would be the 2 interrelated questions that can aggravate harmony in the workplace environment. So I just wanted you to look to that.
Certainly. The first question, what is success? It all depends on our definition. It's not a Western way that used to be like that. But as I travel different countries and different cultures and in different continents, there is a huge shift in the way, I won't just say intellectuals, but there is a huge shift in the way things are looked at right now, especially in this day and age, and especially after COVID. I saw that I was in US during the Twin Tower explosion that was more than 2 decades back. There was a shift in the priority of our lives at that time. And again, after COVID, things are never the same. Things have changed. So it all depends on how we define success. Of course, there is no right or wrong. If I have to again bring in a neuroscience perspective to the definition of success, see, if we are still in that comparative mode of winning over something and winning over people and pulling somebody down to climb up the ladder, it is quote unquote that animalistic tendency of fighting to win. That is competition. However, animals, they do that for their real survival. But us as humans, we have it is not even for survival. It is with full we are cognizant of the fact and we want to step over somebody and then come up. It is not even an animalistic attitude or tendency. But what I'm trying to say is, it is that competitive fight. It's not the flight, but the fighting nature, which is at a lower level in the evolutionary ladder, that is what that competitiveness is all about. But we cannot let go. So we need to be competing with ourselves. The mirror has to be our competition, not the boss, not somebody next door office, but we need to be better than last year, better than last month, better than yesterday. We need to compete with ourselves. And again, in this evolutionary model, it's always the cooperation and collaborative effort is of a higher order than the competitiveness. So it all depends on our definition of success. And just recently, a few months back, I was speaking to the students and faculty of Indian Institute of Science, which is of a very high, it is equivalent to or even beyond Ivy League universities in US, right? The students are of that caliber. This is what I was talking about. How do we define the success? We really need to redefine the success. And again, new evolutionary biology and new neuroscience research shows that we need to work towards fulfillment. Then the whole definition of success changes. When we are in the comparative mode, we are working for fulfillment. We don't even know, it's not even fulfillment, not even contentment for that matter in the beginning. We've all done that at certain stage. But as we evolve, this way of looking at human evolution itself has to change. We need to be working with fulfillment, with contentment, and not just for fulfillment, even though that is the first stage, and then we move forward.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. And unfortunately, it seems that these issues that come up inculcated as children in the school environment, where you still first, second, or third, and priority is given to that competitiveness that shapes then what is regarded as success through life. We've got another question.
But let me take up that second part of the question. I have not, it is the issue over power. That is the reality. There is no way we can change. And it is not just in this country. It happens everywhere, in many different places in each and every country. It happens at different places, but there will always be certain people who are not like this, and that is, or places or institutions or organizations which are more conducive for our type of philosophy or our values, for that matter, not even philosophy. The culture and the values of the organization or the company that we work has to match with our values. Personal values and company values have to match. So rather than the people interviewing us, we need to do a lot of homework before we actually join the work. Looking at the values of the company, will it match? And we have to have that not just courage and the strength to be able to keep looking for the right place. And we will also know at the end, there is no right place. That right place will start up here. But we should not let go in the beginning. We should keep trying different places or in the same place. And then we will know. Yes.
I think the other word you were looking for is patience. Okay, so the next two questions are also similar in terms of the questioning. So Kavita asks, how do you approach a conflict situation of blame or disagreement by being a neutral person? And Nikki asks a similar question in a different way. What can be done in an immediate situation of conflict to disarm the person who is conflicted or the staff member, and offer immediate advice, as the strategies we talk about take time, and it's a development. So how do you address the situation immediately to possibly diffuse the situation and also remaining neutral?
Not to take things personally, which is really, really hard. But what helps is even much more than that time. At that moment, take 3 deep breaths. And this knowledge, what you have gone through, is what is going to help. But for those 3 breaths to help, you should have practiced that other times, mindful breathing techniques or pranayama, knowing fully well how the mind reacts to that deep breathing, and to bring the body and mind together in the same place at the same time. Because as soon as there is conflict, the body is here, the mind goes elsewhere. No, this is happening again. We know what is going to happen if we take this up, either the next day or next month, what is going to happen. Or we go back and feel, oh, we should not have done that, and that is why this is happening. Right away, if you notice, whenever there is conflict, the mind goes back and forth between past and future, or it's stuck on future, or stuck on the past, or goes back and forth between the two. You need to bring your mind to the present moment. How do we do that? The breath is the bridge between body and mind. As soon as the mind goes to the past, that means the body is here. The mind is imagining what has happened in that scenario. The mind has gone way back. So you need to bring it to the present moment. And remember, at that time, we don't know what is happening in the other person's life to be able to be saying those things, to be able to do these things. Maybe that person has a lot more power than us. We will never know. Just to be compassionate, and at that moment to be quiet and just acknowledge. Acknowledging is one thing and accepting is another. Just acknowledge and take time to think about it in a very calm manner, especially in a high charged conflict situation. Much more than our words, our also the energy level, both the teams or both the people can feel. That training the mind to be calm at that moment. And after that, after half hour, to go back to that person and see for yourself, test yourself. Can you be in a neutral way at that moment? You have to keep testing. That is how it's a ground, testing ground for your mind. Keep doing that until you get that confidence that you can do it. Otherwise, this becomes piece of theoretical knowledge, it won't happen the very first time. It won't happen the second time. As we keep practicing, even small stuff, whether it's at home or with friends, if we keep working on this, ultimately we will get to that. And sometimes we may not be able to get that, and it is okay. The next moment we should be able to, even if we lose our cool at that moment, to go back and say, I will think about it. Maybe you have a point. I am not getting it right now. Let me think about it. There has to be a reason why we are both differing right now. Let me think about it. Can we take this tomorrow over a cup of coffee? Just as though you would do it with a friend. We should be able to do it, and it is possible to do it.
Thank you, Ushama. I'm not sure if there are any other questions that we can take, but while we are waiting, I just wanted to invite everyone to the upcoming talks. I've just put in the email address also for the clinic talks that are going to be coming up. And I also just wanted to share with you the other very important talks that is coming up on the 27th. Hope you can see that. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Yeah, okay, let me just get the right one. So the next talk is going to be related to, okay, I can't find that now, but it's being related to
workshop. It's not a talk, but a workshop on forgiveness.
So it's a surviving a violent society through forgiveness. And I think living in a violent society as we do means that we are subject to this, and it's important that we look at ways of forgiving before we can actually move on. So this will be on the 27th of August, which is a Sunday. We encourage everybody to actually do this as a face-to-face discussion and talk. There's a lot more benefit to it than doing it as an online, but we also want people to benefit from the experiences of others. So please contact us if you need more information about that to register and attend the talk. Okay, I'm not sure whether you can still hear me. I think I've lost connection for a bit.
We can hear you, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so we're just left for me to thank Ushama and everybody for their participation and attendance. And I hope that your next working day tomorrow will be able to be beneficial in this way, and that we will all have more harmonious and fruitful relationships. Ushama?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Namaste.
Om Namo Narayanaya, and good evening to everybody.